Today in the Last Wire podcast, we're joined with Ed Whiskey 4 Echo Mike Bravo from Tennessee. Welcome to the show, Ed.
Hey, thank you very much, John.
Can you tell me how you got into ham radio? Where did the bug come from?
Well, my father, he's a silent key now, but my dad was KD8EEJ, and he lived in Ohio, and I was deployed to Iraq, and my dad sent me the Gordon West study book and the Gordon West set of CDs. And so I took those CDs, uploaded them on my computer, and I had a laptop there, and I told it to play, and I just told it to play in a loop. So it was always playing, and I put it like at a low volume. And I'd go out on patrol, come back, go out on patrol, and come back, and I always heard Gordon West's voice talking. And I could lay there in my hooch and listen to what he was talking about, and I would take notes on the walls of my hooch. The walls were this weird cardboard material that you could write on, and it would erase. So I used dry erase markers to write notes. And people would come to my hooch and they'd say, "Man, it looks like a Bill Nye the Science Guy room or something," because there was notes on every wall, because it's not a big hooch. And I could reach all the walls in one spot. So, but so that's where I got it from, was from my dad. Yeah.
Very inspiring. Was it, for you being in Iraq and studying, was it a release from the reality of being in Iraq? I found that quite interesting, the studying of ham radio and being in a war zone.
No, I didn't have a lot of downtime. The particular company I was in, we didn't have. We had quite a job to do where we were, and so we were doing our job quite a bit, and that's how come I just let it loop, because I could never sit down and say, "I'll read chapter 1 today," because I was constantly outside the wire doing missions, so I just let it loop and play. Everybody else would just watch movies that DVDs that they had brought from home, or they'd have mail sent to them, and everybody was exchanging these DVD movies, and I'd fall asleep if I watched a DVD movie, I guess, or I wouldn't want to get halfway into a movie then have to stop, so I just chose to listen to the CDs. And at one point, I brand new, didn't know anything about the hobby, and Gordon West had said, "If you have any questions, give me a call. Here's my phone number," and it's in the CD, in the audio CD. Well, I was really excited. I'm like, hey, let me take a test. I'm ready now, because I'd listened to it for like 2-3 months, and I finally made it through all the. And I called him, and his wife answered the phone, and she says, "Gordo, you have a phone call." And he said, "Take a message. I'm eating." And she says, "No, you better take this one. It's a young man in Iraq." And he came and he took my phone call, and he's like, and then he explained to me better the VE system and what you have to do to get tested and all that. And I realized, well, sitting where I'm at, that's not going to happen. So I told him thanks for his time, and he asked me my dad's call sign. I told him, and then in 2000, that was in 2008, and then in 2011, my dad passed away. My mother was cleaning out some of the house, and she'd sent me some boxes of my dad's stuff. And then one of my dad's boxes was a QSL card from Gordon West. And I thought that was pretty neat.
That's a great story and a great loop of... I think ham radio is very much a family. And as much as we all don't know each other, we all have a connection. And that is ham radio.
Absolutely.
Now, when you got back and you had your first activation, can you tell me a little bit about kind of your trial by fire in ham radio and emergency response?
Okay, yeah. So I got back. I'd taken my Iraq money and bought my radio equipment. And I had made like a box to put my station in, a wooden box, had a front and a back that would come off, and all I had to do is plug into power and plug into the antenna. And I thought, hey, this way I could just pick it up and use it wherever I need to. And this is 2009 when I'm back into 2009, and I'm a new ham, and then so I'm getting involved in as much activity as I could. I got my general license shortly after I got my technician license, and in May of 2010, we had this huge flood here in Nashville and here in Clarksville, Tennessee. And so a lot of people were being displaced. It was a once every 100-year flood, or they say, or 500-year flood. So I was on my way to work, and they had gotten on the 2-meter radio, and the Red Cross was saying, "Hey, we need some volunteers. Is anybody out there available?" And I responded. I said, I'm going to work. I said, but let me check when I get there. Anyway, long story short, work said, yeah, go ahead, go volunteer to go do that stuff. I said, awesome. Like I said, I was in the Army at that time and Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I think they could handle things on their own, and the area wasn't flooded here. And so I come home, grabbed my wooden box I made, and threw it in a truck and drove to the church that they told me to go to, that they were planning on setting up for people who've been displaced. And so I set up in the church, got my antenna outside, I got my box, and I called the Red Cross on the radio, and I said, hello, this is me, I'm in position. And they said, hey, that's great. I said, all right. I had no clue what I'm doing there. They just asked me to go there, so I'm there. And then it wasn't, but maybe about 40 minutes went by, and they called me and said, hey, Ed, you are now net control because we're taking on water and we got to go.
That moment right there, what was going through your head when you're a new ham, activated, you're excited, and then, I'm in charge?
Well, the very first thing that went through my head was the famous thing that you say over the Army radio, say again, over. And they had to take it down. They ended up taking on 5 feet of water in that building they were in. And they were probably, I'd say 400 to 500, 600 meters off of the river, from the river. So that's how much it had risen. And I didn't know what to do. I had no idea. I hadn't been listening long enough to know what the net control was doing other than answering people. So, and I was in the Army long enough at that point, I'm like, okay, when in charge, take charge. And then the calls started coming in, telling me what roads was closed and what bridges were out and all this kind of thing. And I quickly realized, I have no map to look at. I have no notepad. Because I just thought, hey, go set up a radio. Sure. I didn't know what that meant. So I was so unprepared. And so I told myself this will never happen to me ever again. And so I was writing notes all over the outside of that wooden box and with a pen that I borrowed from the pastor. And people would call, hey, is this bridge open? And I'd have to stand by as I search around my wooden box to see if I see the name of that bridge on my box. And then after they would open a road, after they would let some levees loose or open on some dams, then I would put a line through that note if it was no longer applicable. And but yeah, it's definitely trial by fire, absolutely, right into it.
Since that time, I presume you've been more prepared. You've better understanding. What role now do you play in amateur radio when it comes to emergency response for your community?
Sure. So ARES, Amateur Radio Emergency Service, is a part of the Amateur Radio Relay League. And so, I try to volunteer as much stuff as I can. I belong to the local club. I got into ARES, and we would have ARES meetings. And then as time went by, people, being this is a military town, people move. And most of the ham club, though, is permanent. Most of it is. But sometimes there's a few members that have to go. And eventually I ended up taking over the emergency coordinator position of ARES. So I was the person in charge of my county, Montgomery County ARES. And so I held it for a while. And during that time, the guy who was in charge right before me had gotten me an account with the National Weather Service. And so when I say got me an account, that meant that I had a name and a password, and I was able to join the National Weather Service, or what they call NWS, the National Weather Service chat. And so I could log into the chat room, and there was 2 chat rooms that I had access to with my credentials, and that was the Nashville National Weather Service and the Nashville National Weather Service for hams. And so what that meant was I could now jump into the chat room where they start putting warnings and watches and all the things that come over the official NOAA radios. The text information of that all happens right here at this National Weather Service chat room. And they talk about it amongst each other as they're about ready to start releasing these tornado warnings, tornado watches, severe thunderstorm warnings. And they'll actually publish it there at the same time that a computer reads it over the NOAA radio. So I can actually see it before it's happening, see it on the map, because there's also a map available on that website. And so what I would do, I would turn on my 2-meter radio, and I took over kind of on my own the responsibility for the 2 adjacent counties next to us, because I know that they don't have a ham that's in the National Weather Service chat room. So I just let them know over those 2 other counties, hey, I can reach your repeater from where I'm at. So if I hear warnings and stuff that affects your area, I'll turn my beam your way and I'll announce it over to your repeater if that's all right with you guys. And they're like, oh, yes, please do. What do you need from us? I said, when the weather's coming, if any of you have a weather station, because that's what the National Weather Service asks for. They ask for measured weather reports. I said, you can let me know that you have measured weather, or if any of your hams see any of these following items, and it was what's called reporting criteria. And so what would happen is, so I would have Montgomery County, which is my county, Houston County guys, and then I have one guy that's in Stewart County. And those guys could then, if they see something happening weather-related, they could call me. And so I became a liaison between the hams of the county and the National Weather Service. And I had one ham ask, hey, I want an account too. And all the group was like, yeah, we all want one. And I had to kind of explain to them, it's a thing where they don't want too many people, because you can't have everybody be liaisons, because then it's not a liaison anymore. Then everybody, and the room gets pretty full during an event. So what we did was we kind of decided on location around the county. I'm the furthest western guy in my county. And so I looked at the farthest eastern guy, the farthest northern guy, and I was spreading ourselves out. So in case I became in the affected area where I lost power or I needed to go to my tornado shelter, then one of the other fellows could pick it up. And so I contacted the National Weather Service, and I was able to get a few more accounts for these other hams that were spread out from myself. And so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. When I know the weather's coming, I'm able to sit right here in the computer where I'm at, get on the National Weather Service, which you can't see because where my camera position is. All my radios are stacked up here on the shelves, and that's it. I start taking reports from hams. I keep a log now. I keep a notepad and pen here at the shack, and I actually got on a spreadsheet and made a log for logging that kind of information, and I save it, and then now I might type it up later and save that, just in case it's asked for later on, because sometimes some of your logs through that could be subpoenaed as part of proof or evidence when they have homes that are damaged and they need to come in and, state of emergencies, when they file for a state of emergency or additional funding, that kind of stuff. I've never seen it happen, but I've been told it could. So we keep
always that potential,
stuff.
Isn't there?
Always the potential. So that's it in a nutshell there, John.
Now, looking at your region, Ed, what infrastructure is available? I presume 2-meter radios, 70 centimeters. What other tools are in your toolbox for ham radio in the community as a county response? Now,
it's changed. We had two 2-meter repeaters and one 70 centimeter repeater here local. And unfortunately, our 70 centimeter and one of our 2 meters that was on the same tower went down. And it's been a long journey trying to get those back up. And the 70 centimeter repeater happened to be on what's called M tiers, the Middle Tennessee Emergency Repeater System. And that's a series of linked repeaters that goes across the entire state. And so the people that are in the National Weather Service chat room, they also have a liaison on that. And so unfortunately, I've not been able to reach that here in over a year. But because I'm in the chat room, I can type on there to the liaison, hey, I can't reach the M-Tiers chat, but I'm here. Montgomery County's up. And she's kind enough to say, sounds great, Ed. Thanks for letting us know you're there. Any information you have, just put it here and we'll take it from here. I'm like, okay, awesome. Because normally what's happening is they're reporting it on the 70 centimeter linked repeater system. So we're down to one repeater, but in the ARES practices that we've done, we've practiced enough on 2 meters with the repeater, and then also after we do a net on the repeater, we'll do a simplex net. So we pretty much know who can talk to who. And so if there's a time of emergency and I open up a weather net on the repeater, part of my script covers, if we lose the repeater, then please report to 146.580, and relays will be very much needed to pass information.
Well, thank you very much, Ed, for coming on the show. I really appreciate you highlighting your role, what inspired you to become a ham, and what you're doing now to keep the community safe.
Well, I appreciate it, John. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
You've been listening to Ed, Whiskey 4 Echo Mike Bravo, from Tennessee, and he shares with us his experience during a major flood in his community as a new ham. I'm your host, John Bignell, Victor Echo 1, Juliet Mike Bravo. Remember, in times of crisis and natural disaster, amateur radio is often used as a means of emergency communication when all other conventional methods of communication have failed. The Last Wire podcast will profile and share stories of hams who have volunteered their amateur radio knowledge and equipment for communication duty when disaster strikes. If you have a story to share, we want to hear from you. Send us your story at john@lastwire.ca. Until next time, this is Victor Echo 1, Juliet Mike Bravo, 73.